Browns wrapping up preparations here for the Kansas City Chiefs on a Friday. We know they will not have Cedric Tillman on Sunday. David Njoku is questionable. Joel Bitonio is questionable. Ashley, let's go through all of those guys. Let's start with Njoku, obviously not knowing if he's going to play through that hamstring injury. He said he did play through it during the Pittsburgh game, so maybe he'll be able to get out there. It's going to be a last-minute decision, but even though he's not having that typical David Njoku year, 30 targets the last two games, so not having him would be noticeable for this offense.
It would be a huge blow to this past game, and let's just stay off the top with these status updates between him and Cedric Tillman. This is not how I anticipated our Friday going. If anything, I thought David would be ruled out today and Cedric would be cleared, but as Kevin Stefanski said, Cedric Tillman did not clear the concussion protocol yet. And when we talked to David today, in terms of his number of targets, he mentioned he tells Jameis every day, I want the ball. So those two guys are working well together. He said he hasn't been dwelling on some of those easy drops that he's made these last few weeks too with those 30 targets. I think most fans probably remember that. But it would be, I think, a big blow to not have him or Cedric Tillman because it's just going to allow the Chiefs to key in on Jerry Jeudy even more than they're probably already planning to.
Yeah, and Jerry Jeudy was telling us yesterday about some of the ways he's getting covered differently. He's seeing safeties, he's seeing some underneath coverage, some things he kind of has to learn to deal with now that he's the bona fide number one. But with Cedric Tillman, again, we've talked about this before. This just sort of kills some of that momentum he had. He was playing so well before that injury, and now the Browns aren't going to have a guy that I think they were really hoping would take a leap here in the second half of this season.
Yeah, this is going to be his third straight missed game, and when you have young players, I mean, Ced's in his second year, he's not a rookie, but he still isn't a veteran. I think this last part of the season, with them out of playoff contention, was really going to be key to evaluate this pass-catching core even further without Amari Cooper as they get further removed from that trade. So I do think it's unfortunate and, an unfortunate chance that he's missing an opportunity against a pretty good opponent, obviously.
Now, real quick, we will just mention Joel Bitonio did return to practice today at least. That's the one thing about David. David did not practice today. Joel Bitonio did return to practice. It seems like he's going to play even though he's questionable. And we'll note Mike Hall is questionable. Myles Harden is questionable. But that is because they have to be activated off injured reserve. So they have to be listed as questionable. Both of them should be active on Sunday. Now, another guy who hopes to be active on Sunday, Myles Garrett. Obviously, he'll play, but I just mean active in the sense of getting after Patrick Mahomes because he's still searching for that 100 sack, Ashley, and he's half a sack away, and he downplayed it, but I think to get that 100th sack against a quarterback who is going to be in the conversation for the greatest of all time when all is said and done, I think that means a little more to Myles than maybe he's letting on.
I also think it means more to him considering the history between these two guys and that 2017 draft class. We just did a huge chunk of our preview podcast on this yesterday because, of course, the Browns had the number one overall pick that year. They took Myles Garrett, not bad, a future Hall of Fame edge rusher, but of course, they could have had a chance at Patrick Mahomes in that draft. And we had the discussion yesterday, what would you do in hindsight? And I think we all agreed most teams no one would pass up on Patrick Mahomes because he is that good. So I think Myles knows that that's been a question over recent years. Myles knows what people say about it. And as we've talked about with Myles, he knows how to get himself fired up. So I think that history there, even though he wants to downplay it for us, I think it will mean a little bit more to him if he is able to take down that guy for his 100th sack officially.
And of course, Patrick has had all that team success. You mentioned it though, Myles Garrett on track to make the Hall of Fame. Those were probably the two best players picked in that draft. But Myles Garrett today said comparison is a thief of joy when he was asked if he compares his career to Patrick Mahomes. But again, Ash, I just think in the back of his mind, he probably wants to add a couple Super Bowls. He probably wants to be in a position where he can say, yeah, I know this quarterback went number one overall, or this quarterback went behind me. I was picked number one overall, but I was still the right pick.
Yeah, and I even remember him talking about the possibility of not going number one before he was drafted and saying, hey, if the top team takes a quarterback, I'm looking forward to basically making that guy's life miserable for however long his career would last. So 100%, I think it just goes back to who Myles Garrett is, what he's shown us in recent years, and how he motivates himself. And I definitely think, again, it would just mean more to do it. And when you're 3-10, you got to find ways to self-motivate the way he has.
All right, well, whether Myles Garrett gets that 100th sack or not, we're going to be at Huntington Bank Field, and we're going to cover everything that happens at cleveland.com/Browns.